Hello, this is Scarlett Pimpernella, and there is so much going on, so I will do my best to update you on all the latest. Yesterday afternoon, the state of Pennsylvania responded to the Texas Supreme Court case. They said that the charges were bogus and seditious. They did not respond to the specific claims being made in that case. For example, the Electors Clause violation, that violated the Electors Clause of the Constitution. And they did not respond to the accusation that in changing the way that signatures are verified on absentee ballots, they undermined the Constitution and the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. So it was a pretty weak response. And today, this morning, the Supreme Court is meeting to review the case. So we should get some news on that probably sometime next week. 106 House Republicans, which is more than half of the House Republicans, have filed amici curiae to back the Texas Supreme Court lawsuit. I'm going to put a list of those Republicans who have done that in the description box, and you can check and see if your House Republican has signed that. The Democrat attorney generals in the Democrat states have backed Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And you'll see a map of that later in the presentation. So let's look at this. Pennsylvania has responded to the Texas Supreme Court case and said it's bogus and seditious. They called it legally indefensible and, quote, an affront to principles of constitutional democracy. This is blustering. This is, as they say in Shakespeare, the lady doth protest too much. They don't have a counter argument that they can make, and so instead they are making accusations of sedition. It's the same thing we've seen before, accusing Trump of orchestrating a coup against the established power structures, instead of, in actuality, the coup has been orchestrated against Trump. So this is from the response, Pennsylvania's response, quote, since Election Day, state and federal courts throughout the country have been flooded with frivolous lawsuits aimed at disenfranchising large swaths of voters and undermining the legitimacy of the election. The state of Texas has now added its voice to the cacophony of bogus claims, Pennsylvania said in its court filing. And even the way they speak, you can just hear that regal tone of, why are you bothering me with this frivolous thing that is not important to the people like me, the royal people. Okay, according to the Washington Times, the Supreme Court is scheduled to meet tomorrow morning, which is now today. Quote, the justices could decide to grant or deny the lawsuit at any time, but they are set to meet for a private conference Friday morning where the matter will likely be discussed. The Keystone State, which is the state of Pennsylvania, asked the justices to dismiss the case, saying Texas does not have standing or sufficient injury to sue, nor does the state make any claim based on law or fact. They don't have standing or sufficient injury to sue. Changing the rules of the election at the 9th hour does not constitute injury. In the eyes of the state of Pennsylvania, this is unbelievable. Audacity, arrogance. Okay, 106 House Republicans have signed the brief backing the Texas Supreme Court lawsuit against Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and Wisconsin. As I said before, that's more than half. So the mainstream media is in a pickle because these are newsworthy items, and so they're needing to cover them now, which is creating a conflict in the narrative that they've been presenting versus the news that is happening regarding the election. So let's look at some of the headlines from the mainstream media. This is from Bess Levin of Vanity Fair. She writes, her headline is 106 House Republicans back Trump's bid to overthrow the government. Can you believe that? There were actual claims being made that the changes in the election rules were unconstitutional. It didn't have to do with overthrowing the government. It had to do with upholding the Constitution of the Republic. And then she writes she quips, nothing to see here, just an attempted coup by the president and half of all Republicans in the House. So in that, she's indicting not only the president, not only the Republicans, the 106 Republicans who backed the president's, well, Trump is actually involved in the Texas Supreme Court case too, and backed the state of Texas in its filing of that case, but all the supporters too. And this is from the Washington Post. This is an objective headline, so applause to Washington Post. More than half of House Republicans support Texas lawsuit challenging election results. However, just in the middle of this, so I read this article and there was not one fact being presented about what actually was in what claims were being made in the Texas Supreme Court case. But right in the middle of this, we have this assertion of fact. Biden won the election with 306 electoral college votes to Trump's 232, and he leads the national popular vote by more than 7 million. Trump, who has refused to concede, has repeatedly pushed baseless claims and outright falsehoods, insisting the election was rigged. These baseless claims are now being presented to the Supreme Court using the Constitution of the United States as a basis for why the election was fraudulent. But the Washington Post is not willing to lend credence to that idea. And here we go. There has been no evidence of widespread fraud in the election. And last week, Attorney General William P. Barr said the Justice Department has found no evidence of widespread fraud that would overturn Biden's election. So completely ignoring the Michigan hearings, the Georgia hearings, the video evidence from the State Farm Arena in Fulton County, Georgia, just countless evidence, the Pennsylvania hearings. So just as a reminder, this is Hannity and Ken Paxton, our Attorney General in the state of Texas, talking about the Electors Clause. And can you explain how the Electors Clause in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin were violated? And this is the crux of it. So in almost all of the cases that we have states that allowed mail-in ballots in cases they were not supposed to. They allowed for non-signature verification, which is really important. So when you request a mail-in ballot, you have to sign for that application, and then they'll verify when you send your ballot in on a sleeve of the ballot. Usually they'll verify that signature to ensure these two signatures match. Well, if you just waive those requirements, you have no way to go back and verify that the person that requested the application is the person voting. That's a pretty important thing when in Pennsylvania, you go from 233,000 mail-in ballots 4 years ago to 2.5 million, and a difference in the election was only 81,000. That's a very important issue to ignore. Agree. So Democrat attorney generals have aligned with Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. And what that means is that nearly every state has picked a side. As you can see, only Idaho, Wyoming, Iowa, Ohio, Kentucky have not gotten involved in this lawsuit at this point. These states on the West Coast, Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, they have all gotten involved and they are backing the defendants in this case. In the East Coast, New Hampshire has not gotten involved, but every other East Coast state is backing Biden, with the exception of, well, do you consider West Virginia East Coast? I don't think so. Yeah, it is heating up. Conclusion, the Democrats are now being forced to cover these stories in the mainstream media. They have no choice but to obfuscate the central tenets of the Constitution. And when they do that, what they're doing is creating propaganda rather than news, propaganda that supports the view that Trump and his backers are orchestrating a coup. It's false news. They're protesting too much, meaning that they've done that they're hiding the violations of the Constitution that were a part of this election. And in my view, the Supreme Court will rule for the Constitution. I'm going to put in the description box easy ways to let your state legislators know how you feel about the election steal. You don't have to actually contact the legislators in your state. There'll be a list of legislators in battleground states that you can contact, and I really hope you'll do that. That's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.